and the hotel key he swore was his. The alert arrived on our shared calendar at 7:11 p.m. Working dinner client crisis 8:00 until. It slid into the square like a coin falling perfectly into a slot and then sat there, blameless as daylight. 2 minutes later, Michael texted, "Don't wait up. Might be late. Love you, Red." He always lowercase loved me when he needed the sentence to look harmless. I tossed the message into the quiet like a pebble and listened for trouble that didn't echo back. The pan on the stove had gone from shimmer to smoke, onions turning bitter because they didn't get what they wanted in time. I moved the pan off the heat and told the apartment this was ordinary. The apartment stayed elegant and unimpressed. At 7:39 my phone blinked again, an unknown number and a single line. If he's in a crisis, the crisis has good cologne and a western view. Below it, a photo cropped almost politely. The edge of a terrace, a glass with a thumbprint, the black shoulder of a suit I knew by the way it held its breath. A hand just entering the frame, long fingers, masculine ring, the kind I'd seen on a guy who liked to make words sound like favors. The text followed, 23rd floor. The elevator's honest. I typed, "Who is this?" Response, "A rumor with your best interests at heart. Bring that walk you do when you haven't decided yet." It was raining the way a city rains when it wants to be generous, clean on the way down, dirty by the time it arrives. I took the train 2 stops like someone who still has manners. The hotel did what hotels do when they want to be remembered by names they can't afford. I watched my face rise in the elevator mirror and try on versions of itself. The terrace was half wind, half lighting design. Cameras on dates had better angles than the view. I stood where the heat lamp could mistake me for someone whose evening had been planned by kindness, and in that minute he appeared. Michael, doing the profile that had once convinced me he'd never need my last name. Beside him was the ringed hand's owner, Arden, creative director of an agency that liked its adjectives unearned. Arden laughed, the kind of laugh that tells you where to put your glass. I felt the old creature in my chest wake up and check the exits. Someone touched my sleeve the way you touch a secret you don't want to tear. "See, you're good at this," Levi said. He had appeared from a corner, not hiding, just affectionate toward shadows. I knew him from 2 fundraisers and one networking thing that forgot to be about work. He was the kind of man who could pour a drink as if it were a confession and still leave your dignity standing. You come when air is needed. "You sent the text," I said. "I confirmed a location," he said. "He sent the content." Michael leaned in to hear something Arden didn't need to say twice. A hand found a wrist and stayed there longer than manners, shorter than proof. I could catalog touches for a living and still forget the word for that particular temperature. "Do you want theater or a door?" Levi asked. "Theater is free. The door is the service elevator off the bar. I left it on the latch." "Why?" I asked, and hated how quick the word came out. "Because you've been a model tenant in a house that isn't yours," he said, smiling without angles. "Because he's been rehearsing guilty and I'm bored of rehearsals." There were 100 right things to do, and they made the hallway smell like bleach. I took the door. The corridor on 23 had the expensive silence of spaces that don't pretend to be anything but a hallway. The door Levi had promised was honest. Inside, a room had already decided to be photographic. Levi didn't follow. The latch folded itself into manners. I crossed to the window and watched the terrace through a narrowing of rain. Michael was still doing the easy posture that makes strangers decide they must already know you. Arden's thumb rubbed the inside of his wrist once, twice, as if reading time by friction. "You're early," a voice said. It was Levi. It was Michael, already inside the door I had failed to lock after entering. The room didn't startle, it had seen worse. He stood by the minibar, hands still on the handle, eyes on the window as if the city had the next line. He didn't look surprised and he didn't look rehearsed. He looked like a man, which is sometimes the hardest thing. "You booked a working dinner," I said. "I worked," he said. "We had dinner." "Is that what you call it?" I said. "It's the word I've got," he said, and then, catching my eyes, "Tom, I was going to tell you." "In the morning," I said, "after the calendar cleared its conscience." He watched my jaw go tense and decided not to ask it to relax. "You hate that I lowercase love you," he said. "You hate how much of me is not your job." "I hate your calendar," I said, "and the way you take the elevator like it's court-mandated." He smiled in spite of us, which was how we had met in the first place, both of us laughing at the idea that a room could save itself. He took 2 steps in and stopped where he could be read without turning the page. "If Arden texts you a photo, it's because he wants you to know which part of the lie is makeup," he said. "He thinks I'll pick him if I can prove I'm better at novelization than you." "And will you?" I said. "Pick him?" he asked, as if the word weren't furniture already moved. "No, write a draft, probably. Hate myself over the edit, already underway." The rain did something cinematic and then thought better of it. Michael closed the distance a 3rd step and held out a hand to my forearm without landing. "I wanted to be caught," he said. "Not punished. Caught. It's the same grammar, different breath." "You wanted to be supervised," I said, "like a child at the deep end." "I wanted a witness who didn't need the last page to make this worth reading," he said, and his voice pulled tight over the last few hours like skin over a drum. I reached for his collar and felt the wet edge where the terrace wind had flirted with him. I should have said no, and I should have said it kindly. Instead, I drew him close enough to remember the inventory of his mouth. He kissed like a person who had almost burned down a building and was now willing to sit in the ash and not complain about the smell. We didn't pretend this was forgiveness, and we didn't pretend it was crime. It was a door the room had been promising both of us for months. When he made the quiet sound at the hinge of the jaw that has ruined more treaties than jealousy, I put my fingers there and held gently, the way you hold a secret that would prefer to be rumor. He let his hand slide under my shirt and stop at the warm edge of my spine, the one that announces its existence like a candle you forgot you lit. I felt the hard shape of his phone against my hip and the stupid truth that we were both awake now. "You taste like expensive rain," he said, "and bitterness." "Onions," I said, "and a rumor with benefits." He pressed his forehead to mine and said my name like someone picking up a glass he hadn't realized was already his. "Say you love me," he said. "I lowercase love you," I said, and watched the laugh catch in his throat before it could be too useful. We didn't undress as much as we admitted that fabric is a suggestion. He found the hem of my shirt and rested his palm there like a promise he knew he shouldn't make aloud. I slid my hand under his jacket and up the line of his back where a good suit knows to get out of the way. The bed was behind us and stayed that way. The wall offered itself like a note you can pin desire to without leaving a stain. It was enough to touch like a sentence that had permission to end without court approval. I memorized the temperature of his shoulder under cloth and the thing that happened to his breath when I gave it back to him. He pulled away first and the room respelled itself. "I didn't sleep with him," he said. "I wanted to prove I could stop the elevator before a number ruined us." "You wanted to text me a confession before the sin had a name," I said. "I wanted to be a man I could explain," he said, and that was almost elegant enough to be a tragedy. The door latch cleared its throat. Levi stood there, neither apologetic nor necessary, looking past us to the city like it might want his opinion. I brought you up here so you could decide whether the story needed a window or a wall, he said. I can leave you to your architecture. You're very proud of your metaphors, Michael said without malice. Jealous, Levi said brightly. Of what? I asked. Of anyone who gets to be forgiven in the present tense, he said, and then, softer, there's a car downstairs if either of you wants to pretend to go home, or you can use the service elevator I didn't lock on purpose. Either way, the rain's doing better now. When he left, the door didn't catch until the third try. Michael sat on the edge of the bed like a man who had practiced how to weigh himself. He looked at me with a steadiness I had asked for 100 times and rarely gotten in quantities that felt domestic. Tell me one true thing, I said. I wanted to hurt you in the way that makes staying look brave, he said, and winced at himself as the truth crossed his tongue. Tell me another, I said. I love you more than I love being interesting, he said, and that one landed like a coin that knows which way it wants to face. I went to the window and watched Arden laugh like a marquis. He'd moved on to someone else's wrist, which is a talent and also a sentencing guideline. Michael stood beside me and didn't touch, learned something from the way my shoulder failed to lean. The glass reflected us back as two men who hadn't finished learning their job descriptions. Do we go home? He asked. Or do we eat room service and tell the truth until the walls get bored? Both, I said. All of it, in an order that embarrasses us less than the alternatives. So we went downstairs through the corridor that prefers low voices. Levi had told the doorman nothing and everything. The car waited like an alibi we could afford. The driver didn't glance in the mirror more than a professional amount. Michael took my hand where the city wouldn't be asked to keep our secret and didn't let go until we were 2 floors from our apartment. Inside, the kitchen forgave the onions. I reheated them, added butter to negotiate with regret, cracked eggs, and folded them into a soft, convincing future. He leaned against the counter like a man sentenced to continue. We ate at the narrow table with our knees in each other's way and didn't apologize for it. Between bites, we turned the night into a version we could live with. He told me Arden had been giving him compliments shaped like options for months. I told him Levi had kissed me once 6 months ago in a gallery hallway and said, "You look like a conversation that wants to be late." Michael didn't flinch. He did the math and decided not to ask for fractions. When the plates were empty and the room had chosen to be a kitchen again, he pulled out his phone, opened the calendar, and deleted the square with the vague title. He replaced it with "We buy a plant and keep it alive." He looked up like a man who knows not to be sure yet. "We lowercase love the plant," I said. "We uppercase water it." He grinned into the rim of his glass. "Tomorrow," he said, and for once the word didn't sound like an alibi. We didn't make vows the furniture would have to testify about. We undressed slowly, not because we were saints, but because the softness made a better sound inside our ribs. In bed, he curled a hand against my chest, and the pulse there wrote a sentence that didn't require footnotes. Before he fell into the quiet I wanted to hear the night making, he said, "I don't want to be forgiven. I want to be watched while I change." I said, "That's the price of the plant," and he laughed into the pillow like a man who had decided to pay. Toward morning, Rain left the city forgiving and embarrassed. The alert on our shared calendar stayed where he'd put it. I brewed coffee too strong for anyone's feelings and watched him become the version of the man who could go out into a room and keep his hands to himself. The city tried on sunlight and decided to go with it. He took his mug, and before he sipped, he said my name the way elevators say floors when they mean it. I said his back to him and meant it too. When he left for work, the door clicked with the small sound doors make when they've agreed to keep a secret and to be opened both. The plant we hadn't bought yet stood in my mind and behaved. On the counter, his phone buzzed once, a new message from Arden, the preview teasing a compliment that had learned to spell. I tapped the screen to hide it and opened the window for air. We will tell the truth, I thought, and refuse to bleed to death over it. We will uppercase water and lowercase love and not pretend the calendar saves anyone. We will buy a plant and let it supervise. And if the elevator keeps secrets for a living, it can keep ours for now, while we finish the work of making a room that would rather be alive than interesting.